Thank you very much for your kind attendance. I wasn't expecting such a number. So my name is Mohamed Bouchi. So I'm associate professor in Pierre-Marie Curie University. I graduated from France in electrical nanoelectronic devices, and then I went on to England, where I actually worked shortly with Dr. Annam in Cambridge University. There I was working on materials for microsystems, mainly for micromechanics. I left then the university to join Philips Research Labs, where I worked on a nanoelectronic device, more specifically non-volatile memories, based on for the future nodes, 45 nanometers and beyond. And since 2009, I head back to France, and I'm then associate professor there in the Gibbs lab, where we work on the physics of materials, so mainly the characterization on materials, of course, and we develop some nanoelectronic device, but also a large part of the group is working on a photovoltaic device with silicon-based materials, but also alternative materials. So in this talk, I will develop more my work on carbon-based materials, so mainly the carbon-based materials, so diamond. I worked on photodetectors using diamond, and since 2011 and 12, I'm more focused on graphene-based devices and characterization, large-scale materials, not exfoliated, so CVD and epitaxial graphene. Before to reach this point, I will introduce the university. My partners that will work with me within the XNM project. So we are involved in 4 courses. I myself involved in the semiconductor physics course with Dr. Ahmed Marouf. Then I will introduce few of the equipment that I am using to develop the characterization of these materials and also the nano device. So the point here is not to develop the principle of operation of these devices, but more to link characterization, properties, and processing. So a few words about the university. So we are located in central Paris. So the gray area is Paris and the close outskirts. So the campus is in the 5th district, and we have a few labs and hospitals because the campus is science, but also medicine. So if you look at the numbers, we have more than 21,000 students registered in science degrees, and also 11,000 students in medicine. Among them, roughly 7,000 overseas students, including Morocco, Algeria, Maghreb in general. So more than 3,000 PhD running at the moment, and of course some international curricula, including nanoscience curricula, but at the European scale. So we also have 2 offside campus, but are mainly related to environmental and maritime science. So these are the east side of France and south part of science. So I myself located a bit further away on the outskirts of Paris, Gibbs Lab, where we have the nanofabrication and nano-characterization facilities. So the research in this university is more or less divided in 4 research axes: modeling and engineering, where you find computer science, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering; energy, matter, and universe, with nanoscience and condensed matter; earth, and life and health. So of course, life and health for the medicine, for research in medicine. So we have university hospitals. 2 of them are located within Paris. And of course, there is a link between these different research axes through educational curricula, but also the lab may have some links, like with some partnerships. So most of our labs are partnered with the CNRS, so this is the national research body, but especially in medicine, they are linked with dedicated medicine research body like INSERM, or electrical systems like School of Engineering, nuclear system like CEA, and so on. So this can be divided in many collaboration, but the most important one is that the lab are 80% co-run by CNRS. So my collaborator within this projects, so the XNM projects, will be the Professor Massimiliano Marangolo from the Institute of Nanoscience. So he will be running with Dr. Maros the quantum mechanics course. So as I said, myself, I will be in the semiconductor physics, again with Ahmed Maros. Marco Saita and Zio Chambren from the Institute of Mineralogy, Condensed Matter and Cosmos Chemistry will be running the course on computational simulation and atomistic calculation. So again with Maros, who will be quite busy in the next few months. And Dr. Ranam will run the nanophotonic course with Professor Tignon from Laboratoire Pierre Aigrin in the physics department. So these are my colleagues that you may have to see in the coming months once the course is started. So with the core course C1 and C2 first semester and the elective course in the second semester. And of course, these labs that I mentioned here, we will welcome more or less 5 or 6 students from the XNM program. So in terms of nanofabrication, so it has been mentioned by Dr. Ahmed, you are trying here to gather the manpower and also the facilities, because you can imagine that this can cost hundreds of millions. And this is basically what the scheme that we already have implemented in France, but particularly here in Paris. So we use the Photonic and Nanostructure Lab, which is South Paris, where we have hundreds of meters of clean room dedicated for various nanomaterials, but also they own quite a lot of advanced characterization equipment. And either they have their own research project, but also you can go there and collaborate with them on your own research projects. This is basically what I'm doing. So different actions over there, process development, development of instrumentation and also advanced characterization. They patented quite a few new tools, such as different heads for FIBs and STM. And of course, in the research project, the strong expertise is in quantum transport and local electronic properties, which I'm interested particularly for graphene-based devices. So here I just want to highlight a few keywords that you will see in the semiconductor physics course, but you will hear also in the next slide, like things like bond gap in semiconductors, Fermi distribution, carrier concentration, bond gap engineering if you want to optimize device, carrier transport, and heterojunction. So these are the keywords that you will pop up in my talk and also probably in the talk in the coming speakers. And these are the basics that you need to capture, and that's what we will teach here, to be able to run some research project and also build up your expertise in various topics in nanoscience. So in my lab in the Fermatic department, in which I belong, so the physics and electronics of materials, devices, and interface. So we had quite a few research topics. So I mentioned thin films for photovoltaics, wide bandgap semiconductors, particularly diamond, I will talk about. And now I'm running the advanced material like graphene and beyond for developing. For my topic is the 2D heterojunction, so based on graphene, of course, but not only. And I will mention why in a few slides. Characterization tool, you can imagine that at this scale you need to develop and you need to own some dedicated advanced characterization. So basically with lasers and also motion like stages that can move with submicron displacement. So here this is a platform that we use for running micro-Raman spectroscopy, photoluminescence, electroluminescence, and near-field optical microscopy. And that helps us to investigate submicron devices, whether it's for characterization of the material, so looking at the signatures of the materials, like for Raman, looking at defect with photoluminescence, and partly the topography and the plasmons with near-field optical microscopy. Other tools that we own is the IFM, atomic force microscopy, to look at the topography of these nanostructures. So here we basically look at topography of silicon nanowires, and we patented a dedicated conductive probe system that allows us to measure directly the resistance of such devices. So this is patented to Agilent. So we call it the Resiscope, and we are right now, the lab is right now running the Capascope to measure the capacitance at such a scale. So we basically can scan various heterostructures in the trench and look at where is the transition between semiconductor 1 and semiconductor 2 located, and also the space charge created by this heterojunction. So I mentioned the luminescence technique. So in my case, I'm mainly interested in the minority carrier lifetime in photovoltaic devices. So we own two setups, modulated photoluminescence and DC photoluminescence, to look at the defect with the presence of defect within the gap using the photoluminescence that run at low temperature. Low temperature is very important here to be able to discriminate between various defects. And also that makes the system a bit much more complex, because you need to run under helium and under cryostatic system, cryogenic stages. So typical devices that we look at. Here you can see the top electrode, that is ITO. Later on I will mention graphene. So one of my projects is to get rid of this electrode, to replace it with graphene. But the electronic property, although the transparency is okay, optically it's fine, the electronic properties are still rather poor, and we need to develop doping strategy to increase the carrier number inside the graphene to be able to be competitive with ITO. So far it's not. Photocurrent measurements, we plug the device into typical IV system run in a cryostatic chamber. With lock-in detection, we can run IV series. And also, by shining xenon light, we can have typical spectral response that you can do for photovoltaic device, but I can also do it for photo detectors. Spectroscopy, so photoemission spectroscopy system. So that's this platform is unique in France because it gathers X-ray photoemission spectroscopy, Auger emission spectroscopy, and ultraviolet emission spectroscopy. So here we shine dedicated energy onto the sample, and from the binding energy that we measure with the detector and the intensity of the peak, we collect the elemental identity, chemical state, and also the quantity of the concentration of the element. With ultraviolet light, we can measure work function, which is also very important for the previous topic I mentioned, electrodes. So you need to improve work function if you want to inject carriers. But also what is important, so it's be able to modulate it. So now I reach the carbon-based materials. So here, a picture of carbon nanotubes, which are more or less based on the same atomic structures, honeycomb structures, but with various configuration. Here, 1D configuration of nanotubes, 0D with the buckyball fluorine, diamond lattice, and a stack of honeycomb structures, which makes graphite. Actually, if you exfoliate one layer of this graphite, we end up with graphene. And we can do the other way around and say that graphene is actually the basic material to reconstruct those various lattices with various properties. Here it's just a table of diamond properties, and also this column collects the various applications that you can run. For instance, the high electron mobility, hole mobility, and I will say why it's interesting for RF devices, high-speed devices. The large breakdown that you can expect for high-power devices, and so on. Now, I will now develop a bit more about UV photodetectors that I've been working on. And I will show that we need to modify the surface state of the diamond if you want to optimize the device. So again, a few applications. Why UV? Because in the UV range here, in the short UV range, 225 and so, you have quite a few applications that are interesting, like flame detection, photo emission. You can also make UV and deep UV devices by emitting through the diamond, and also some biological and optical application. Also with the UVC, so we can, there is a lot of work on non-line of sight application. That's mainly for when you have no visibility for aircraft landing and so on. So diamond, I put a nest to diamond because actually we consider that there is different diamonds. So the most common one has a gap of 5.5 EV gap. Indirect gap, so the bottom of the top of the valence band is not aligned with the bottom of the conduction band, so we talk about indirect band gap. And the absorption, because of this high or large wide band gap, it's below 225 nanometers, which makes such devices solar blind. So you would not be impacted by the solar spectrum. So here the absorbance spectra, and that's why I mentioned the two diamond structures. One that can be doped with nitrogen impurities within the gap, and that makes the spectrum, the absorbance spectrum, a little bit larger. So we cover a little bit more of the spectrum, whereas the 2A, which is the purest diamond, only has a band-to-band transition. The 2A is much more expensive to make. So bottlenecks, of course, defects and inhomogeneities. The growth of such materials is extremely complex, need high temperature. So you have a lot of surface defects like high logs and edge pits within the materials. So that makes the processing quite difficult. But one of the most important bottleneck, and actually this is what hinders the penetration of diamond into market application, is the difficulty to have N-type doping. So of course I mentioned heterojunction or heterojunction or heterostructures to make device. If you want to make a P-N junction, you need a P-type material and an N-type materials, both of them semi-conducting. In the case of diamond, we mainly, by growth, we can only have P-type. And the reason not to be able to develop N-type is because the ionization energies of the N-type dopant within diamond is too large. Even by heating, it's not enough to activate. So this is one of the major bottlenecks that the diamond technology suffers from. The energy band diagram, you can see that if you stick, so here I'm trying to make a heterojunction. So if you stick the diamond to amorphous silicon with a gap of 1.7, you have a large conduction band offset, and that means that you only have unipolar device. Only holes can travel the junction, but not electrons. So it's good in a sense that makes hole conduction and therefore fast switching device. But on the other hand, you can still not make a PN heterojunction based on diamond. So here I will show, here are depicted two types of photodetectors, Schottky photodiode and integrated metal semiconductor metal Schottky diode. So both connected from the top, and here we have the P-type epilayer diamond grown on a 100 diamond substrate. So the processing here is fairly easy. It's either two-step or one-step lithography. And one of now we want to make UV photo detection using such structures and P-type diamond. Now the problem when you grow diamond, you end up systematically with P-type on top of the surface, because the surface is hydrogenated surface. So you have a whole accumulation, and systematically your system your top surface is conductive. So how this impacts the performance of the photo detection? Now, if we look at the current voltage characteristic of the photodetector, we see already that the reverse current is very high. We have milliamps here in the dark current. Now, if we shine the UV light, we don't see much discrimination between the photocurrent and the reverse current, which obviously makes a very bad device. So now the question is, to which extent we can modify this surface state to get rid of the photoconductivity at the surface due to the Hall accumulation, and have instead a depleted surface. So we use oxidized diamond surface, so with a mixture of acids, and we end up with the following characteristic. So the reverse current is much lower, so in the peak current range, femtocurrent range, and we have, when we shine UV light, we have much larger photocurrent, much larger, but I mean, no, it's not much larger, it's still very low actually, but we can discriminate between the on and the off state. So we do have detection, but the question here is we are very much close to the detection limit. So we need to improve to increase this photocurrent. So this is our status, starting from the hydrogenated substrate, and with chemical oxidation. Now the question is whether we can find intermediate state where we can provide some state to compromise between sensitivity and leakage and make the photocurrent a little bit in between these two states while keeping a very low reverse current. So this is what we did here. We didn't change the diamond, but we changed the processing of the diamond. We use ozone. We decompose ozone within the plasma chamber on the surface of the diamond, and this for various time. So a few minutes up to more than half an hour. So starting from the initial state, we increase the decomposition of ozone onto diamond, and we check our devices. So this characterization is just to characterize the transport of the carriers within the heterojunction. So this indication of the ideality factor gives us an idea of the transport mechanism, in this case, space charge limited current. So after 25 minutes of ozone, we can see that the reverse current still rather low, below 1 volt, around 1 volt polarization, and the on current increases when you shine UV light. So again, we go on until 85 minutes, and we end up with a better nanoamps. So let's say up to few tenths of microamps at 10 voltage with a rather low reverse current. So this device has been optimized as opposed to the hydrogenated and the chemical oxidation. So ozone process is fairly useful. Now, some characterization here. If you look at the dark current versus ozone treatment time, and also the photocurrent, we can see that beyond 85 minutes of ozone exposure, we end up with discrimination ratio between photocurrent and dark current of up to 10 to the 6, which is very good. Now, we look at the spectral response. Spectral response means we shine various wavelengths, and we look at the photocurrent measured. So again, for the various processing time, and you can see that the discrimination ratio, the responsivity, or in other words, is up to 10 to the 8 once we reach 85 minutes of ozone. So surface treatment in such a case is extremely important. The nice thing also with this process is the stability. That was very stable with time. So here, this is just IV characteristics that we fit with different models to extract the transport mechanism. That's also something important that you can extract from the IV characteristics. And again, we also did the same work with the undoped diamond. So I will go a little bit faster, but just to show that we can also optimize the undoped and undoped diamond. So the objective was the UV fabrication, fabrication of UV photodetector based on diamond. As deposited, as grown, the diamond is not satisfactory, so we had to change the surface state. And our strategy was to use ozone exposure onto the diamond. So we managed to remove the high surface conductivity and create surface states in order to be able to improve the responsivity of the devices. I will move on now to graphene for nanoelectronics and photo detection, which is actually my main topic now. So I'm working with two types of graphene, so CVD and epitaxial, which are both the two mainstream technologies available to develop large-scale graphene. And one of the key point for such materials, but it's also true for other 2D materials, it's the modulation of the electronic properties. So I will go fast on the graphene properties because I guess you've heard about it, but basically it's, you can achieve two-dimensional electron gas with zero mass streaming, so extremely fast carries in the band structures of the device, ballistic transport, quantum Hall effect at room temperature, whereas we usually see it at very low temperature for other semiconductors, and also doping strategy that we can achieve on these 2D materials. But here we are talking about material that is a fraction of nanometer thick. We are talking about one layer of carbon atoms. And of course, there's a lot of research basically to develop various applications. The spectrum is extremely wide, transistors, solar cells, sensors, and so on. But as I will show you, the electronic properties remain to be captured and also modulated. Because this is the key. If you want to devise electronic devices, you have to be able to process your material to have very stable properties. So this is the band structures of graphene, which doesn't show any gap. So I mentioned gap earlier. So here, this is the schematic. You can see that the valence band and the conduction band are conical, and they join at a point. Normally, in a semiconductor, like I mentioned before, for diamond, you see an energy gap. That's not the case here. And that's actually one of the main obstacles for graphene that we try to circumvent with nanotechnology and also heterojunctions. So this is part of our work that we do on CVD graphene for solar cells with two case studies, so organics and inorganics based on silicon solar cells. Like I mentioned, we're trying to get rid of the ITO because of the pressure there is on such materials, particularly in Asia, Japan, and Korea, which are the main consumers. But also in Europe, we have pressure to avoid such materials because of recycling, which is expensive, but also because of the pressure that China makes on the ITO, on Indian mine. So, if we just grow graphene and put it on the device, we won't be able to replace ITO because the purpose of ITO is to have a transparent electrode on one hand, so that's the optical part, and on the other hand, it's also the very low conductivity. If you make a solar cell with high resistivity, you basically won't collect any current. So that's why the resistivity is extremely challenging. And here the challenge with graphene is you have to dope it. So put some extra atoms to be able to put either electrons or holes to reduce the resistivity without hindering the mobility on one hand, but also the transparency. We are trying here to make a transparent electrode. So this can be achieved by doping with nanocolloids, so particles that are 10 nanometer diameters that we can drop cast onto the graphene. And we do that sequentially on, like we sandwich those particles onto a few layers of graphene. Now, if we look here at the sheet resistance versus transmitters, optical transmitters, we can see here that with this process, we can be very competitive with ITO here in the star, the blue star. So we have a few tens of amps square, and the transparency is still good. So there is room for optimizing. There is opportunity to replace ITO with graphene. Now the trouble is to get homogeneous graphene. That's another story, and that's very much dependent on the growth condition. Another piece of work here is to measure the transport properties of the graphene, but here we do it on amorphous silicon. Either we cap it or we put the graphene onto amorphous silicon to be able to characterize the graphene and see whether there is charge transfer, in other words, doping from the amorphous silicon that will be part of the solar cell and the graphene that will be the transparent electrode. So we devise typical whole bath test structures, a few micrometer wide, so that can be done either with optical lithography or even lithography. And then we measure a set of properties, the mobility versus temperature, the carrier density, the sheet resistance, and also we look at the IVs. Here, this is the resistance, but if you put it the other way around, it's going to be the current voltage characteristic. And here we can see that by putting on p-type graphene, the resistance is divided by a third of what we have with n-type graphene. So there is definitely charge transfer by using a doped semiconductor. So another piece of work is to combine graphene as an electrode and another semiconductor material, but also two-dimensional, like iron.